I'm Spook Spann.
And I'm Brian Stevens.
Welcome to the 11th Commandment,
a podcast about how chasing big whitetails has become a religion to us. The plan is to get into the head of one of the most successful whitetail hunters on the planet
and to share over 40 plus years of hunting experience with you. Big bucks, life, and America. Here we go.
Welcome to the 11th Commandment, brought to you by Spook Nation. I'm Brian Stevens here with Spook Spann, one of the most successful whitetail hunters on the planet. And on this podcast, we're going to talk about not only chasing, hunting, but killing big mature whitetails. Spook, my brother, welcome to 2025 and kicking off this new exciting podcast.
Man, I am so excited. We've been talking about this for so long, and to finally be here getting started is very, very exciting. I feel blessed.
No, absolutely. And, I'm excited, because I get to dig into that insane whitetail knowledge brain and pull out for people some tips and some secrets and, how-tos and just how you approach this, thing that you're so passionate about and have 40 plus years of experience and so many different, opportunities, challenges, things that you've gone through over the years to have such the success that you've had.
Yeah, it's kind of, without knowing it, it's been the perfect storm. Growing up in the country, the son of a sawmiller, was constantly going to look at timber and land with my dad even when I was young. Yep. And, always asking him questions about why are we doing this? Why are you doing that? And, then also hunting. My dad was primarily, real passionate. He loved to quail hunt. We always had bird dogs when I was young, and he loved to bass fish. We had a bass boat, and we, very, very young age was bass fishing and quail hunting. And then he deer hunted, and he liked deer hunt. Now, obviously, he didn't have it like I ended up getting it as far as the obsession, but he did like it. And then when I was at a young age, I started, well, I had a guy that went to church with us that bow hunted. And back in the 70s, I mean, there weren't many bow hunters. And I only knew just a handful of, grown men that even owned a bow or that went bow hunting a little bit. And if one of them killed a doe with a bow, you were Boone.
I mean,
you were like Daniel Boone status,
And absolutely.
It was funny though. I was fortunate with Dad having the sawmill. I had, we had some land there at the sawmill. We had a pretty good sized piece of property, and one of the guys that worked for us planted a garden there behind the sawmill. And so I remember, I got my first bow. It's kind of a long story. I talked my mom into buying it for me early because my birthday was Halloween and season opened end of September. So I was like, I want to get it early. I want to get it so I can bow hunt this year. And I can't remember, Brian, if I was 13 or 14, but I was went right in that age in the 70s. And I'm obviously dating myself. But I remember, Dad, and of course, things were the mentality was so much different back then. Yeah. You didn't have, back then the Baker tree stand was your climbing stand, which was a death trap. I can't believe I survived those things. But we went and Daddy built me a stand, and it was a big deal for me. And I went hunting first morning, and then the afternoon, opening day, and this was like, I want to say around 1975 or 76, and so just so happened on that very first day, the local sportsman's club was having a wild game dinner. And so my mom was going to come pick me up at a certain time, and we were going to go get ready and go. I was going to go to the dinner with Mom and Dad. Well, so I come out of my stand and I come out in the field there, and I look over in that garden and I see a big doe, and oh my gosh, I lit up like a Christmas tree. I was belly crawling first day, and got up there 9 yards. great stalk for a kid.
Yep.
I go to pull my bow back, and I'm shooting fingers.
Yep.
I think I got 2 pins. I got a 20 and a 30-yard pin. And out of the corner of my eye, I see a rack like this. Just, in my mind, thinking back, it was a 170.
Of course.
It was probably more like a 130, actually.
It doesn't
but
matter.
Still, in my mind, with a 13-year-old, I thought it was a 170.
Absolutely.
And back then we had some deer like that,
Yep.
so it could have been. And I just remember it had real light colored horns. And instead of me getting back down behind the weeds in the edge of the garden and getting ready and watching and drawing my bow and then easing up when she wasn't looking, I just swung on it like swinging on a duck, and she saw me and blew, and I released, and he took off, and the arrow hit right behind him, and I was just sick. But what I learned is, and this was the first thing I asked my dad, I was like, I'm back there in the woods hunting, and the deer is out there in the garden eating peas.
Yep.
And what I realized immediately on my very first day to bow hunt was that there's something to that. And it basically set a precedence for the rest of my hunting career and the way I would hunt a lot of the times. I started hunting. I killed my first deer when I was probably, 8 or 9 years old. And we used to go to LBL and Cheatham to the public hunts for the youth hunts. And, any time I could go, I would go. And I had killed maybe, 2 or 3 deer, but nothing with a bow. It's my first, obviously bow experience. So the next season, I was fortunate because the company had a bulldozer and we had a tractor and a disc. And so me and Dad went out and he built me a food plot in a little honeysuckle thicket and had a big old yard tree in it that I built a stand in, and I planted peas and clover and wheat.
Oh.
And so, at 14, 15 years old, I got my first food plot.
Yep.
And I called them pea patches. Nobody had never heard of it. Nobody that I known had ever done it.
Really?
And,
okay.
I killed a couple of deer out of it. And then then from that standpoint on, it was on, I mean, I was, by the next year I'm 15 and I'm getting on the dozer and building my own food plots.
Yep.
And I'm doing I'm building my own stands and I'm, and I still was doing a lot. I mean, obviously, I was doing tons of scouting, always looking for rubs and scrape lines and trails and funnels and bow hunting those places and just learning what kind of places in the woods. Because growing up in Tennessee, it's really hard to differentiate where bedding areas are at because we're 80 and 90% rolling hills and hardwoods back then, and deer could bed anywhere. Yep. So you were really just looking for travel corridors. And then when the acorns started falling, started looking for the trees that had an abundance of sign under them and fresh trees that were dropping fresh. And you learn that, you start learning certain years that, certain trees start dropping before others and they're always torn up the worst. Or maybe they liked a certain tree better than others. So,
sure.
You start learning all these things about, woodmanship and how to figure out, things like that. And then admittingly, sometimes I just, you want to say you got lucky, but I remember one day, I think I was like 17. My dad said, and it was late bow season in October. And Dad's like, "You going hunting this evening?" And I was like, it was hot and typical, just late October, hot, sunny afternoon.
Southeast weather.
Yeah, it was terrible. And I said, "Yeah, I said it's so hot. There was a big creek and spring in the back of the property, and I was like, it's always a few degrees cooler down in that hollow. I'm just going to go down there and find a good place in the edge of the cedar thicket and just climb a tree. Put stand on my back, go down there and climb a tree, and sure enough, about 45 minutes before dark, here comes a a big 8-pointer walking right down the creek, and I shot him at right at 50 yards with fingers through the woods, which, you know, back then was, it's funny, I was shooting Savora broadheads, and which was obviously a fixed blade back then, and just center punched him, you know.
I mean, that's a heck of a shot, man.
I just was tickled to death, you know, just ecstatic. And I never forget my uncle say, "Oh, it'll be a long time before you ever kill another one like that," you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next year, I went on public hunting on LBL, and I hunted public hunting all the time and did a lot of scouting, and, you know, and all that stuff. You don't realize it, and you're spending time in the woods with Dad, you know, looking at timber, and he would point out things, and then we would go tracking deer in the winter in the snow, and you learn, you know, certain things.
So much.
Yeah, you pick up on what deer, you know, the site where they like to bed, the kind of places they like, you know, just different things like that. And it's kind of, I used to do this a lot. I used to just put a stand on my back and just go walking.
Yep.
And when I found something that looked good, I just climb a tree, and I killed so many deer like that. And that next year at LBL, it was pouring down rain. I'll never forget it. It was November 1st, and LBL was always, bow season would close here on Halloween, and it would be open at LBL. So we'd always go hunt a few days until, you know, in between bow and gun season. So we went to LBL, and LBL has always had really good deer. It's right up there on the Kentucky-Tennessee line. Part of it's in Kentucky, part of it's in Tennessee. It's up there near Barkley Lake, just a fabulous place to hunt. And Dad's like, I took Dad to a place that I thought was really good that I had learned about when I was a juvenile. And so I had found this area when I was a juvenile, and I just thought it looked really good. And I was, back then, I thought the furthest you get away from the road, the more likely you are to encounter.
That's crazy. You had that intuition that early.
Yeah, because
how important that is.
Yeah, I just thought, you know, hunting next to, you know, a lot of the guys on public hunting have you know, just notoriously are going to hunt probably less than 500 yards from the road, you know.
Absolutely.
Well, I'd try to get, if I could, I'd find a place where I could get a mile back, just try to get, you know, and it was pouring down rain. You know, nowadays I may not even be hunting. If I did, it'd be in an enclosed stand, you know. And I found this cool little spot where these points come off. There was a saddle and some cedars and big rubs and scrapes, and there was oak trees on the point there that deer had been freshly eaten under while it'd been raining a couple of days. So I was like, and it was kind of getting late in the evening. So I said, I'm climbing a tree right here. I wasn't sitting there 45 minutes. I looked, and here come a big white horn 11-pointer, just a stud, come walked right up like 9 yards, and I shot him right. He was actually coming towards me, so he was quartering to me, and I shot him right where his neck met his shoulder, and he just made a little hook, fell right behind me. And I mean, I was like on top of the world, you know. And I was like, yeah, everybody said I wouldn't kill another one like that last year. I didn't kill one twice as big as that one, you know. And so, you know, I just I was, and then that as I got to be a teenager, actually, when I got in high school, I wasn't hunting as much because I was playing basketball all the time. So, you know, I fell in love with basketball, and that was my priority at the time, and that and chasing girls. And so, that's it took away from my hunting. So I wasn't able, even though my junior year, I killed a big buck the day after Thanksgiving because we had a couple of days off. So I killed a big buck. I was sick as a dog. I killed him during rifle season. I win anyways, and you know, sure enough, I killed a real nice deer. And then my senior year, I killed a big one. I think I killed him the day after Christmas in the morning because I had practice that evening, so I went that morning. And usually morning hunting in Tennessee late season is not very good, but
same in Georgia.
But you know, I remember all my older buddies, you know, they were just like, oh my gosh, they were just going crazy. You would have thought, I mean, the deer was probably a 150, but you would have thought he was a 190 the way everybody was acting, and back then
Listen,
everybody thought that was a really big deer, and it
it
is
is
a
a big
good deer.
deer.
It is a good deer. It just, but what I was doing this whole time, my bar kept raising for
Sure.
myself,
Yep.
and I did. I mean, I went through that time just like all us rednecks did back then. It wasn't necessarily about how big a one you could kill all the time. It was just about how many. We had a very liberal season back then. We could kill a lot of bucks, and it was just about how many tags. And yeah, everybody wanted to kill a big one, but we were still shooting every buck we saw,
Yep.
And then I remember in what really well, so I had a couple bucks I let get away. I didn't let, but they got away from me and really fueled the fire during that time too. That was, really bigger bucks than I had killed. And then in 1985, and the reason I remember this is the year me and Marty got married, two things happened. One, I went to the first ever QDMA meeting in the state of Tennessee.
Okay.
And I met Grant Woods, Dr. Grant
Okay.
Woods. Grant was super young, right out of college. QDMA had just started. And I just started after the meeting and everything, I started just wearing him out with questions, and we ended up sitting out on the tailgate until midnight that night. Everybody else is gone. Parking lot's empty. And we're sitting on the tailgate till midnight, just talking about,
I mean, you're nerding out on whitetails.
I'm nerding out on whitetails in 85, and Marty's sitting in the truck asleep. And bless her heart, man,
And
I can't believe she stuck with me. But yeah, I mean, I come home, I'll go to Dad, and I was like, listen, this is what I learned. I'm excited about this. This is what I feel like we need to start doing. And Dad was all in, which was awesome.
That's great.
Dad
Your
never
dad was
questioned.
an awesome man.
He just was all in. He's like, totally get it. We're tired of shooting. We've shot all the other little bucks we need to shoot. This is what we're doing now.
Yep.
And so then also that same summer, I went to some kind of little hunting deal they had in Nashville. I heard about it on the radio. And of course, obviously this is way before cell phones and internet and all that stuff. And I mean, we had dial phones, so you hear about most of the things you hear about on the radio. Yep. And so I was like, oh, man. So me and Marty went to this show. Well, there was a couple of guys there from Kentucky, Western Kentucky, and they were advertising waterfowl hunting, and they had two big bucks hanging up in their booth. Big bucks. I mean, these were 180 plus bucks,
Yeah.
And I was like, I went back, talked to them 2 or 3 times, and I'm looking at their pictures, and that one guy said, it looks like, I think we got us a deer hunter instead of a waterfowl hunter. And I said, well, listen, I like to duck hunt. I said, I like to hunt everything, but I said, I'm looking for a place I can kill, big bucks. And I said, I've never even seen a buck like these two in Tennessee before. He's like, well, we got them, and he told me a little bit about the area. And so I started going up there. It cost me $100 a day to go up there and hunt.
That was a lot of money back then.
And so I would go hunt opening weekend. And then maybe if I could, I'd go back, and then Daddy started going with me, and I killed a couple of, pretty nice bucks there in a couple of years. Then I started learning about the area, and then I decided I was going to start taking a week to hunt. Well, that year when I took a week off, I killed a 170 kind of deer, which was awesome. Yeah,
that's
I was
deer.
Fired up, and the area I was in, I really liked, and then I ended up, hunting there every year and spending most of my vacation time there. And then, it just kept progressing. And of course, all that time I'm making my stuff better at home. Any of the properties that I had access to, I'm planting food plots, and I'm creating, rather than having one spot, 1 or 2 spots, I'm trying to get me, my mind said I need to get 10 different spots fixed. Yep. So I've got I got options of different bucks on different properties, and back then anybody would, we knew everybody. It was our hometown, everybody knew my dad. And so it was easy to get permission. And so I was just, getting into it more and more and more. And about sometime during that time in the mid 80s is when the first trail cameras came out.
Okay.
And they used a 35 millimeter film in it. And I used to take them Marty would fuss at me for taking them to 1 hour photo because, spending money because I couldn't wait to see them,
Of course.
And it was so much fun. And I didn't even know anybody else that even had them. I saw them advertised in North American Whitetail. And there's another story. I grew up looking at magazines and looking at North American Whitetail.
Absolutely.
And reading Dick Idle stories and actually, now I've actually become friends with Dick Idle, and I was messaging his son Cody just last week. I hope they make it to SCI next week. But he was kind of one of the first ones that ever just took the magazine and the chase for giant bucks to a whole nother level. And he had that obsession, and so I was just soaking in every bit of knowledge. And of course I would look at pictures of those big, Alberta, Saskatchewan bucks. And I just like, I can't wait to go there someday,
Yep.
And then Texas, I'd see all these pictures of these Texas bucks, and really, just not knowing any better, the Midwest really wasn't hyped up or that popular back then. It was all about, it was really all about Canada and Texas.
Okay.
When I was young. I mean, that's how long ago this has been. You didn't hear anything about, you just rarely ever heard. Of course, there again, there's no social media.
Yeah.
There's not anything on TV about it. You got 3 channels on TV to watch.
Yep.
You either learn it through a magazine, or that's about it.
Yep.
And so everything was really based on, the things you'd hear was in Canada and Texas. And, of course, I started figuring out that I started hunting Western Kentucky. Obviously, I was finding bigger bucks there. And then I started hearing stories about Southern Illinois, and I found me a couple of places up there to hunt. So that's, it's just all slowly growing.
And pieces are coming together.
Yeah, the pieces are coming together. And so with my knowledge of the, providing food sources, so then it went from planting, clover and peas to planting corn and beans and more, wintertime stuff. And so you're just, the whole time you just keep raising the bar and obviously things are getting more popular, more bow hunters. We're having archery shoots and broadhead shoots. And, it's just during that time, especially in the 80s, it really exploded.
Well, one of the things that I love just hearing you kind of tell this story and this journey is you were starting to build a network too of people around you that obviously Grant is a Yoda of whitetails as well.
So that was my first real big connection was Grant.
But you're utilizing and implementing these things that you're soaking up and learning at an early age that just building on itself. And so, that says a lot too, to, be able to reference and utilize people that are, experts in their area.
Yeah. And that's where it really did. I mean, it started with Grant and then the guys from Kentucky, and the guys from Kentucky were big waterfowl hunters. They competed in all the goose calling championships and stuff all over Missouri and Illinois and places like that in Kentucky. So they knew tons of people. Well, all these guys all they cared about was shooting a duck or a goose. They didn't even care about deer hunting, So they tell me they's like, and I was just like, I was just eating it up, because they say, oh yeah, come deer hunt. We got monsters. We don't even hunt, man. They'd give me a cussing if I'd go goose hunting with them and get out of the pit and go climb in the deer stand. I mean, they was just like, you're crazy. You've lost your mind, And I was like, I wouldn't trade every goose in the flyway for a big buck,
Absolutely.
And so I was just, but you're right. I was just getting all these connections, unknowing that what it was going to lead to at this point in my career. And then I it's funny. I met a local guy here that was friends with Barry and Gene Wenzel.
Okay.
And not many. Do you know who they are?
I do not, Spook.
So I'm telling you, Brian, you need to look up some of these guys' stuff when
okay.
Freaking legends.
Okay.
They're shooting recurves. They're shooting deer. They're from Montana. They're twin brothers. I mean, whacking and stacking. These guys never wore a stitch of camo. They're wearing plaid. You know,
They're just legit hunters
I
and
mean,
killers.
serious, legit hunters. There's videos of them. When you look their stuff up, they did a video. They did deer drives with recurves. Buck come by 40 yards through the timber, through the cottonwoods and the bottoms in Montana. They draw back, shoot him on the run, 12 ring him. He wouldn't go 40 yards, pile up 160-inch buck. And I was going, oh my gosh. You know, I mean, they were like, in my mind back then, they was like the pinnacle of, you know, bow hunters. And so I just randomly meet this guy, and he hears about, you know, my love and passion, and another buddy had told him about me. And so he comes to my house one day. And I got, you know, at that time, I got some decent bucks mounted, you know, he's like, well, he said, he said, I can hook you up with somebody out west that can, you know, put you on, you know, some 160 to 180 class deer. And I was like, oh, really? Well, it was Barry and Gene Wenzel. And I remember having these awesome phone calls with, I think Barry's the one. You know, I'm not even sure. This is really bad to say. I'm not even sure they're still alive because they were quite a bit older than me at the time. Yeah. And I hadn't heard anything out of them in several years. I ran into them at some shows and got to spend some time. I actually never did get it worked out where I could go hunting with them. It just, something always happened. I was still working at the sawmill back then, and I was very limited on vacation time. So most of the time I was spending that time in Kentucky or Southern Illinois.
Close to home.
Yeah. But I learned a lot, and that was a huge network. I mean, they introduced me into some, you know, because they say, hey, there's this crazy kid out of Tennessee. It's just like got it bad, you know, and they were friends with Dick Idle. And so, you know, Dick was from Montana also. And so, you know, I set up a pretty big network. And, so I left out another thing it's just crazy how all this happened in 85. So another thing that happened, I heard on the radio one day, they're having a Wild Sheep Federation banquet or not banquet, but show at Opryland Hotel.
Okay.
Well, I'm like, wow, you know, I was like, so I called Dad. I didn't even know what it was, you know, and I obviously hadn't sheep hunted or anything, but I wanted to someday because I had a friend, I had an older gentleman that I knew that had shot a couple, and I just wanted to go. If it had anything to do with hunting, I just wanted to go.
Yeah.
So I called Dad. I said, hey, you know, I said, tomorrow, actually, I didn't even call him. I just saw him at the sawmill. I said, they're having some kind of big hunting show at Opryland Hotel tomorrow. You want to go? He's like, yeah, I'll go with you. Which is really, you know, even though my dad was a workaholic and he worked a lot, anytime that I ever asked him to go somewhere like that with me, he always went.
That's awesome.
Know? And I'd usually initiate it, but he always went. And we went, and oh my gosh, Brian, I was in heaven. I mean, there was sheep outfitters, mule deer outfitters, elk outfitters, whitetail outfitters, just everything, anything in North America that you wanted to hunt was there. Yep. And, you know, I was actually kind of depressed when I left there. It was great motivation because I was like, my gosh, I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford this stuff, you know, because it seemed outrageous at the time.
Yeah.
You know, looking back now, if you got I mean, back then you could go on a sheep hunt for $7,500. You know, your deposit's more than that now.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
It's so double that.
It was insane. And, I mean, you could go on a great mule deer hunt for $4,500, you know?
Yeah.
And, but I met a lot of people. I talked to anybody that had a big deer, mule deer or whitetail. I stopped and talked to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a couple guys, Jeff Warren and Kim Bonnet at Bucks and Bulls, who had won an award for best outfitter in the nation or something. And so I spent some time because I really love, you know, it's hard to be a whitetail hunter and not have some passion also for hunting mule deer at some point in your life.
Absolutely.
And so I'd see those, videos and stuff, and I was just like, oh man, I want to do that so bad. So I got to talking to these guys and ended up a couple years later getting in a position where me and Dad could book a hunt with them. And so I went with bucks, and me and Dad went with bucks and bulls. Man, it's been probably 25 years ago, back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Just fell head over heels in love with mule deer hunting. Was in camp with what is now some of the biggest names, some of the a lot of the who's who of the mule deer world out west. I met while I was hunting with these guys, because bucks and bulls was kind of the
go-to place,
the big deal.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the time. These guys took the time to talk to me and really engage in conversation, like not knowing me from Adam.
Yeah.
And
but
so
that's a sign of a good outfitter, somebody that takes the time, and it doesn't matter who you are.
It is. And so my hunting life is just really through going to shows and meeting people and talk to them. They see your passion, they see your love and excitement for it. I mean, I'm sure my eyes were glassed over talking about it, and they're just like, this guy, he's eat up with it. He got it bad, And so it just went from there. And, I got, of course, me and Marty had kids. I was probably right around, I guess, 30 when we had, we had a daughter and then a son. And, that's obviously taken some priority in life, but I'm still, of course, eat up with the hunting thing. And too, man, I played a lot of basketball. I mean, I absolutely love the game so much. And I was playing, I can't believe Marty put up with all of it. And, but that kept me in shape, and so when I'd go on these hunts, and I was always, worked out and played basketball. And so I could, it was nothing for me to throw my stand on my back and walk a mile or two and climb a tree and hunt till dark and take it down and put it on my back and walk back out, It just was nothing to it. I didn't even consider it was nothing. Now, if you asked me to do that, I'd laugh at you. But it's just, I'll be thinking about, well, how close can I get the bad boy buggy?
Look, it is not how could you physically do it? Yes, there's just a different mindset.
It is.
When we get a little bit older, we've been there, done that.
Yeah. But, and part of that, admittingly, was as I grew in this progression of, hunting better places, finding better places to hunt, providing food sources. And, I mean, used to, they didn't have enclosed blinds. You couldn't get one around here anywhere. I just built one. I just started building them, because I'd have places where I'd hunt where there were so many deer that it's hard to keep from getting busted, And I mean, I was using skunk scent and fox pee and cedar scent in my clothes, and all
you
this
can't
stuff.
beat that wind, though.
I know, it was just like a constant struggle, wallowing in the dirt and cow manure and everything else, trying to cover up scent. And of course, during that time, I'm trying to remember the exact year. It would have been around 2000. Started going to Kansas. And just like you can imagine. And of course, first year I killed, a really nice deer, and Daddy killed a nice deer, and then we're eat up with it, and by that time I'm in business, and I'm buying and selling timber and land on my own, and started doing some developing and starting to really just trying to make enough money to be able to go to do the things I wanted to do in the hunting world. And so it's been a long progression of things that really wasn't planned, but just was the perfect storm. And like you said, really the biggest thing that came out of it was the networking. I've got so many people that I know, and I mean, really worldwide, but especially in North America, from Canada to Mexico. I've got, I mean, thousands. I mean, it's not even in the hundreds. I'd say it's in the thousands of people that I know that if something special comes up, I'm going to, there's a good chance I'm going to get to know about it at some point and have an opportunity and actually more opportunities than I even have time or money to even take advantage of. And so, but you know, it's just, it's just the networking and the knowledge. And, you know, when you start hunting all these different states, you learn each year, you learn more about that state. And, you know, there again, I'd sit around and pick whoever I'm hunting with's brain, and you start learning about, you know, their success and their knowledge. And then you're learning, you know, about, you know, why the deer are different in this state than they are in another state. And of course, with the different hunting regulations, some states you can feed, some you can't. So in the ones like Kansas and Oklahoma and Ohio, where you can feed, in Kentucky, you start learning how to manipulate that situation so that you can have, you know, the best opportunity for success. And, you know, there's just obviously a huge misconception that you can just pour out a bag of corn and a big buck's going to run up there and start eating on it and you just shoot him. And obviously it's not that way. But for people who don't know any better, that's, you know, that's what they think. And so, you know, you have to learn. And a lot of it's just trial and error. Mm-hmm. All this time you're building this network. Every year I'm getting new contacts and friends through Grant Woods is becoming during this time, his network has grown enormously. Yeah. And he knows hunters and landowners all over the nation. He's finding out about big bucks and properties everywhere, you know, because he's a biologist and he's up for hire and people are wanting him to come in and help them manage their ranch or their farm. So I'm like, hey man, I'm looking for this. Oh yeah, I got a guy in Missouri. You need to call him, you know. Or I got a guy in Kansas, or I got a guy over here, you know, and he's finding these people that nobody knows, and they're not outfitters. They're not advertising. They just got, you know, and a lot of times people think that, well, you know what, they're not going to do anything. They love to hunt. Well, you know, some just enjoy the camaraderie of spending time with another person that has the passion and the love that they have. It's not always about, you know, it's not always about money or who gets to shoot the big deer or whatever. There are actually people in this, you know, world that actually enjoy seeing somebody else be successful, you know.
Well, to that real quick, Spook, it takes so much that I've learned from you, and I've shot some nice deer myself, but it's hard to kill a mature 5 and 6 year old deer. Even that you find a place that has it, the amount of work and study that goes into that. Yeah, sometimes you show up and you kill them, but I just think that's an important, I know we'll get to that, but people introduce you to these opportunities, but you put and not everybody wants to put the time and patience and diligence into killing a big deer, even though it's on their property.
That's exactly right. And that's another part of it. And, you know, a lot of times I would meet an older gentleman that just loved the challenge of growing them.
Yeah.
He liked to hunt, but he didn't love to hunt. But he loved seeing somebody who did love to hunt, you know. And so it was a lot of different things like that. And then of course, then when I started doing TV, that just even takes things to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Then your network quadruples in a couple of years. And so then you got outfitters who would like for you to hunt with them and advertise and get PR.
Yep.
Well, you know, my thing is that I'm all about that, but I'm not that guy that wants to shoot. I'm trying to kill a big buck. And so I've got to come to an arrangement and an agreement with somebody where, you know, I'm still getting to hunt a really big buck. We're going to come to an arrangement for advertising and things like that. and maybe I still have to pay something because, I don't, if I'm going to be gone from my family and away from home and spending time somewhere, I'm not, I'm going to try to match wits and hunt the biggest thing I can hunt. Am I
Yep.
going to eat some tags? Yes. I'm going to have some years where I don't kill, but I always thought that was one of the fun things about Spook Nation is that we didn't always kill the deer we were after, but we usually passed up some really good deer that would drive people crazy.
Oh, I know. I've seen them.
Yeah, yeah. And so, my friends like you and Slim and different people would just, which added to the fun of it,
Yep.
and so it turned out that worked. You didn't necessarily have to kill or have a kill on every show if you showed good footage of your experiences, and the
That's
deer
right.
that you did see, and the reason why. And then if you had a deer that you passed up and you killed him the next year, then you're like, oh, look at this,
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of satisfaction and still is in that. And I mean, I still get my heart broke every year from a deer that I pass up somewhere that gets killed. But I figure if I pass up, 5 to 10 nice 4-year-olds a year and an occasional 5-year-old, if half of them make it to the next year I get an opportunity, then that's good,
No. Well, look, your results speak for themselves, and I know we're going to, give people a sense and get to see some of these giants that you've killed, and yeah, I mean, when you pass, it stings a little bit on a borderline buck, but when you have that opportunity to kill that deer that you really passed on, and they're just, it's remarkable the difference a year or two makes on these big bucks and these states that you hunt that are just breathtaking animals, And so, and you know what, look, for some people, they don't want to pass and that's their right to absolutely do that. But for you, and I've always respected, is like you get your focus on one particular animal and it's a game of wits. It's a chess match. And I know that's part of what you love is kind of putting the time and effort and strategy behind it.
It's really just about persistence and consistency and then just strategizing, admit it. Yeah. And for sure, everybody, and I don't want anybody ever think that I'm degrading another hunter because they choose to shoot a deer that,
not at all.
I wouldn't shoot. Not at all. Everybody has different circumstances and abilities and time and financial abilities. And there's so many different things that go into it that I totally get it. A guy only gets 4 or 5 days a year off and he goes to Southern Illinois and he shoots a 3.5-year-old 145 and it's the biggest buck he's ever seen. I'm proud for him,
Absolutely.
And so I don't ever want anybody to think that I think that way at all, because I don't. That's not,
No, look, I know that about you. I've known you a long time. I think the beautiful thing about kind of learning from you and picking your brain is if you are patient and you can let a deer get to 5 and 6 years old. I've seen it myself, even down here in Florida. I shot my biggest Florida buck, 140-inch deer this year. And for Florida, that's a good buck. He was 5.5 years old.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
So, but it's hard to kill those mature deer. So you got to be patient, let them walk, provide the nutrition. But if that's something you want to do, it's remarkable to see the difference in that animal's evolution from year 3, 4 to then 5 and 6 and what they can be. And, and that's your thing. That's what you want to do. But there's a science behind it and it's not easy.
And when I got to the point in my hunting life, first of all, with whitetails where I could let a deer go and be okay with not filling the tag or be okay with, oh, well, the neighbor shot it. Shucks, maybe it'll work out on the next one. And I got okay with going on hunts in different states and different places. And I got okay with not filling my tag and not being upset about it and not putting so much pressure on myself. Oh my gosh, my success rate on bigger animals just it catapulted.
It took the pressure off yourself.
I took the pressure off myself and just said, I'm fortunate to be here. I just need to, put my focus in. And I always thought that if I was hunting with the best equipment that I could hunt with, and I was in the best shape I could be, and I never let my equipment or my physical ability stand in the way of my success, then the next part is I got to put myself in a place every time I go where I've got a good chance at the animal that I'm wanting to kill. If I put all those things together and I'm providing the best food source I can provide for them, I've studied the trail cameras, I've watched the weather. If you do that enough, you're going to have, things are going to come together. If I go on if I'm fortunate enough to be on a mule deer hunt and I have to schedule it in a 7 or 8 day period and the weather turns off hot and warm and it turns out not to be so good, that's just life.
It happens.
It's just going, if we go to Alberta on a hunt and we going on a 10-day hunt up there and we get up there and it turns off mild and, the deer that's been coming out every evening in the alfalfa field doesn't show up.
Yep.
That's just hunting.
Nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. And, and so, but if you're, my thing is success is where opportunity meets, preparation meets opportunity. Yeah. It's, that's, my definition of luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Yep.
Which basically I think you make your own luck, and I hear stories about guys killing, giant bucks they didn't even know existed. They're just sitting in the stand and, here comes a deer they didn't know nothing about. I've actually never had that happen. Now before, now I did before trail cameras, but I didn't know what was there.
Yeah.
I killed some good deer. I didn't know what was. Sometimes I maybe had seen them in the summer, or sometimes I hadn't. But ever since we changed kind of the evolution of hunting, and we have trail cameras, and we've become more better at scouting and watching bean fields and alfalfa fields and clover fields and all that kind of stuff. That I can remember. I know in the last 25 years, there's not been a buck that I just look up and say, oh my gosh, where did he come from? I've never seen that deer before and kill him. Never happened. I knew about almost every buck I've killed, and I was hunting that deer.
Yeah. Well, but you put so much time and effort and scouting and, you had inventory, of every animal you could within reason. And so, that's part of, I think too, Spook, is you just putting in the time and preparation, and again, some people aren't able to do that. Some people they just want to show up and hunt and, and get lucky sometimes. And that's awesome. But
it is. And I mean, it's totally everybody, I'm very blessed that I'm very flexible on time. I get to go when the weather's right. I get to go when the moon's right most of the time. And so very, very fortunate to get to do that. I remember, back in the day working at the sawmill, I was a lumber inspector and I was just like, Lord, I used to just pray and just sit there and think about it all the time. Just Lord, I just like the month of November. Just give me November sometime in my life, And then now to think that, I can pretty much go anytime I want to go during the season for the most part is amazing. I never dreamed in a million years that ever be a thing.
But you've earned that, my friend. You've created that to happen and earned it and put your time in, to be able to do that. It's not luck. And, you have earned that.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, life has really flown by. I mean, I just can't even believe that I've got grandkids now that I'm going to be taking hunting here in the next few years. I got to start putting rails on ladders and putting chains around stands, and I got a lot of work to do to
Papa
get ready. I wouldn't put them in some of the death traps I set in.
No, absolutely not.
But so yeah, I got to get all my local spots grandkid proof so they can hunt. Of course, I know I'm going to spoil the heck out of them. But yeah, it's been
you've had an amazing career. You have,
I've been blessed.
Yep. And we haven't even gotten into, and I know we will. I mean, just, the start of your TV career, and you obviously shot the buck that lit the world on fire,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was just a freight train from
I'm sitting
there.
here
And
looking at him right here.
that's it. Oh, he's a beast. And Spook Nation, and and even to today, I mean, you're still killing big deer, and there's so much that you put in during that phase of your career that's gotten you to this point right now. And I know we'll dig into some detail, but just a little bit about kind of that phase of your career. And then, I want to get into, what people can expect from this podcast. And you obviously got
Yeah.
amazing stories, but getting into that brain of yours, and really giving them some sense of what we're going to be doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can sit here and talk till tomorrow morning and the next day. I've got so many things that just, but people always want to know how you got started,
Yep.
how'd this happen, how'd that happen, and it's hard for people to comprehend the networking. And it's just really, that's nothing but a lot of time and travel. And I mean, I tell you another thing, Brian, and you know this because you're this way too. I mean, being respectful of people, doing what you say you'll do, being an honorable person, that's what creates opportunity over and over again.
And
'Cause
it's
it,
how so that part of treating people, I agree, but it's how you hunt, your ethics, and it's what you do, before, after, during, and all of that makes a difference. And I think people see that. And I think, some people, if they have a shady approach to hunting and are going to do whatever it takes at all costs, unethical, whatever, I think
yeah,
that turns people off. And I think this is one thing I want to shout out to you in the sense of two things, brother. One, you don't pay a bunch of money and show up and for a day or two and just kill a big deer.
right.
And if anybody thinks that that's how it happens, then I'm here to tell you, because I personally have known you a long time, that doesn't happen. And
No,
it might be scenarios where you hunted for 10 days and you come back and have to rehunt, adjust, work many, many, many hours
most of
to
the time
get it
that's the
done.
way it happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
And then it's the other part of it is when you shoot a big deer and you do it the way that you do it, and you see the passion, and then people invite you back. That to me is the telltale. When you have these places that you can go to year after year, or that when another big buck shows up, they want you to come back because of how
right.
they saw you do your
Yeah,
business.
yeah,
That I think says a lot. And at the end of the day, you can have a lot of animals on the wall, but you got to also be able to look at them and go, you know what, I did it the right way, and
yeah,
that one was harder, that was tough, and
yeah.
and I give you a lot of props for
Well, I
your
appreciate it. I
being
appreciate
that
it. I
way
mean,
with
I've,
your
I've,
career.
I've had about every scenario that a person can bring up, going from hunting on public lands. I had somebody on Facebook one time just here recently challenge the fact that, I bet, you go all the best spots, blah, blah. Well, it didn't used to be that way.
Yeah,
I've hunted a lot of public hunting, that's part of where I learned a lot about
yeah,
how to, and then owning my own. I mean, the most gratifying hunting I've ever done is owning my own property and
yeah,
developing it into a place where you can grow and harvest a big buck. Every now and then. You're not going to do it every year, but if you can do it, 3 or 4 or 5 years out of 10, that's awesome. You know,
absolutely.
and there's a few people doing that around the country, and I know the juries and Lee and Pat, Nicole, and Josh and Sarah Bomar, and the people that are, being consistent with big bucks. They're putting an enormous amount of work in. I mean,
Yeah,
people can't even comprehend the work that goes
yeah,
into, doing all this stuff. And you've killed a lot of good deer, and I mean, hunting deer around when you grow up hunting in Georgia and Mississippi and Tennessee and the
in
South,
Florida.
Florida, if you can kill deer in the South, I mean, I'm telling you, you can kill them anywhere,
Yep.
because it's just hard. And I know, you've killed some really good deer there in Georgia, And, I know that what it takes too,
Yeah.
and so you just gotta, it's just, uh, like I said, it doesn't come easy. Yeah, you might get an easy one every now and then, but most of the time that's because you had prepared and
Yep.
set the table, and that led up to, yep, I killed him on the first afternoon,
Yep.
but this is what I did the 8 months
Oh,
prior leading up to that,
or one of the things that one of the bigger bucks I shot in Georgia, I learned this from you early on, and it was, you don't hunt if the wind's not right. And you'll stay out for 3 or 4 days, even though that deer might still be in the area daylighting. And because
Yeah.
if you spook and booger a big mature deer, it's going to be hard to really get back on that deer during daylight and kill him again. And I
Yeah.
remember that I hunted that deer. I'd seen 2 other big bucks, not the one I wanted to shoot. I knew he was there. I waited for 3 days and then went back, and that first night he showed up and I
Yeah.
killed him because
Yeah.
the wind was right.
Yeah.
And I learned
It's
that from you
so
early
hard
on when you're
sometimes to
bow
wait.
hunting, especially.
Yeah, it's so hard to wait,
Yep.
and I get it. And I have this conversation. Another big mistake I think a lot of guys make, and I've heard some guys on podcasts recently speaking of this, is, not hunting in the mornings when, except during the rut, pre-rut or rut, because there's very few setups on properties where you can get up against the bedding in the dark before he gets back there.
Yep.
If you're able to pinpoint it that precise, which is very
Yep.
difficult. But
Yep.
if you can, and then trying to get, if you're just going out in the woods or going to a spot or going to a place where, a food plot or whatever if you're trying to do it in the morning and kill a big one, it's very difficult. And so one of the biggest things I try to tell people is just listen, if I'm hunting a big buck, I'm not going to hunt in the mornings.
Yep.
Except during the rut, now during the
Yeah. Yeah.
rut, that's obviously not true, but, because you can get away with a lot more during that time. But, just things like that makes such a difference. Ingress, egress, getting in and out of the stand without spooking deer, just so many things that go into helping you
Oh,
be more successful.
and we're going to get into some of those little,
Yeah, I
tips
know
and
we will.
little maybe unconventional kind of things I know you've done, I've done, and they work,
Yeah, yeah.
so what I want to do is I want to just take a moment here and let's let everybody know what to expect with the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many different bucks that I can't wait to pick your brain about and what went into that hunt, what went wrong, what went right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really about, again, sharing the knowledge. And you've said this to me before, and that is a mature buck that's 5'6" doesn't know if he's got 140 inches of bone on his head or he's got 200 inches of bone on his head.
Yeah.
And it's not about that. It's about the maturity and getting into, the mind of that deer, if you will, and how to kill him, which is
Right.
really hard when they get that old. So that's one
Exactly.
of the things we're going to talk about.
Exactly. I mean, and listen, some people try to make a really big deal out of the fact that you spend money, or maybe you pay for a lease, or you pay for access or something. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It's every situation different. Sometimes it's on my own land, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's on somebody I give permission. But the deer has no idea whether you spent a dime on him or
Yep.
$5,000.
Yep.
It doesn't change the difficulty at all that goes into, for some reason, some people think that if you can afford to lease a place or buy a place or pay an access fee, that you're just going to automatically kill a big deer,
Yeah.
which just blows my mind, and the other thing is I'm probably only successful 20 or 25% of the time.
Yeah.
If I kill 1 out of 4 of the deer that I know about and that I'm after, I'm ecstatic, you know,
Absolutely.
and,
Because
and,
that's a stud of a deer.
yeah. There may be a few years where I know about, it's just like this past year. I knew about a lot of really big deer this year.
Yeah.
And actually I mean, I was probably 1 for 10, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a one of those years where, and several of those deer that I knew about got killed super quick, like first
Yeah.
day or two of seasons in different places. And so, um, I always get, and I don't, I don't know how long we're going to go, but I always get, it's always interesting to me how somebody can question somebody who's fairly successful yet, but you have a random guy that just goes out and sits on a stump or climbs a tree or whatever and kills a big buck that he didn't even know about. And, everybody, a lot of people celebrate it and talk about it and make a big deal, and it's in a magazine and it's this and that. And the guy, you know, good for him, proud for him, celebrate that success. But, he's basically admitting to you that he had no idea what he was, he
Yeah.
just went hunting and he killed a deer. But then yet when somebody puts so much work and time and effort and planning for every year after year, and even the 8 months of season of the year that's not open, you're planning for the next season. Or I make plans 2 or 3 seasons away
Yep. I
sometimes.
know you do. I do
And
too
then
sometimes.
they want to like question that or criticize that. It's really interesting to me
No.
that
Look, you know this, and look, there's going to be haters, there's going to be people that celebrate, and
yeah,
you know what, this is, not for the haters, but it's for just saying, hey, let me share some of my insights and
yeah,
help
yeah,
you be successful. It's not about, bragging about how many deer you've killed. Obviously you've killed crazy amounts of deer, but I've told you this for years. That's what part of this is, getting into your mind. And I said, look, man, you have so much knowledge in just little things that I've learned from you that could make the difference in somebody being successful. And that's what we want is help help
right.
people be
And
successful.
I
And
really think a really good platform for this is going to be to just take a particular deer
yep,
and let's just go through the whole story.
absolutely.
Because one, I get super excited talking about it,
Oh, yeah,
and sometimes I may, I may even shed a tear, you know, from the joy of
yep,
that experience generated, but I think I find a lot of people really want to ask about, well, what about this deer? What about that deer?
abs-
But there's a lesson in every kill.
absolutely.
There's a lesson in every deer, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I really don't see anybody really attacking a podcast and in a fun way of teaching with that particular experience.
Absolutely.
We tend to want to talk about things in general as a whole, and we tend to want to do that in society, period, where it's each individual deer had its own special uniqueness and challenge,
Yeah.
and every piece of property is different. Every state's different. The terrain's different. The weather's different on every deer. Everything's, and his mentality's different. And I try to just look at the deer and what he's doing and how often he's showing up and the sign that he's leaving and get a feel for, man, this is an aggressive deer.
Yeah.
He's very killable. Or man, this deer, I don't know. Man, we only have nighttime pictures. I'm getting 3 pictures a season. He's going to be difficult. He's going to the bottom of the list.
Yep.
So
No,
yeah,
I love that. And like you said, I know if we were in that room together and I pointed to a deer, you'd be able to detail day scenario. And, Billy's that way too, for
yeah,
Florida. That's
yeah,
one man that's killed more big mature bucks in the state of Florida over
yeah,
his life. And I still, to this day, I'll say, tell me about that one. And I love hearing the story and the details,
yeah,
and
yeah,
there's so much to learn from that. So I know
yeah,
everybody's going to enjoy getting that perspective from you, but we're going to layer in some things too about nutrition, how you approach food plots, how you
yeah,
approach game cameras,
yeah.
how you approach, early season scouting, shed
Mhm.
hunting, pre-rut, rut, post-rut, late, all
Yeah,
those things. Every deer is going to have a story around one
There's
of
going to
those
be
times of
something
the year.
in probably anywhere from 2 to 10 of those categories on every
Absolutely.
story,
Yep,
and
exactly.
so it could be a deer that I found a shed, or somebody I know found the shed 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and we're like, oh, okay,
You're going to put the story together.
yeah, yeah. And and so then that's where the story starts,
Yep.
so yeah, it's just but there again, man, a lot of it for me comes back to this unplanned but has happened network, where
Yeah.
I just find out about a lot of good opportunities, and then you got to decide, which one are you going to chase,
Yep.
which opportunity you're going to chase. I mean, I found out about a deer in New York this year,
Wow.
but it's going to be, I found out all the specifics. He's going to be a very difficult deer to get permission, very difficult. You can't feed it, and you just start thinking about all the negatives. And if he was in Kentucky or Southern Illinois or somewhere where you was a couple hours away, it'd be one thing, but to be able to put the logistics of all that, and he's a super deer, over 200, but to have to deal with all the challenges of that in New York, I just like, I don't think this is going to worth the,
Yeah.
I made 20 years ago, I might have said, okay,
I think
but now I'm just like, I've learned enough to know that he's probably, my chances of him are probably 1%.
look, and it might sound crazy to some people, but here's the other side of it too, dude. There's the personal side. You got, a family, you got a wife, you've got kids, you've got grandkids. So,
Yeah.
there's that balance of, where do you spend your time to get the most opportunity? Because when you're gone, you're away from the things that are most precious to you too. And
Well,
I
it's
know that
exactly
about you.
right.
So you got to balance it.
And when I was younger, admittingly, I didn't put as much appreciation and thought into that as I should have. And so I was gone more. And now, really, it's really hard for me to leave if Marty can't go with me.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Used to, when the kids were little and they were at home, I could leave for a couple weeks and she was distracted and just loved. She was a great, incredible mother and loved,
Yep.
taking care of them and doing the thing. And that's the only thing, but then, once the kids are out of the house and she's retired, guidance counselor and special ed teacher, and she retired. I mean, I loved it when she could go with me,
Yeah.
and
I
I
know
don't
you
know what
guys
it
do that
is.
a
It
lot.
seems like every time she goes with me, I kill a big one. So I think she's also part of my good luck charm. I'm like,
Nope.
every time this happens, it just means I'm going to
You got to
be
go.
more adamant about you going next time, And
Absolutely.
so I try to make that happen as much as I can so she can be there.
No, that's a beautiful thing. So before we wrap this up, brother, I also want to let people know, we're going to have some cool guests, and, we're
Yep.
going to have, brother Slim on here, who is got, a different take on hunting, and he's so funny but such a successful hunter himself in Mississippi. So we're going to have
Yep.
him on here, and people that are friends with in the industry. And
Yep.
so, it's going to be tapping into your brain, but also we're going to bring some other people that, you've spent a lot of time with in the woods to, get their perspective on things. And I think people really enjoy that as well.
Yeah. I'm really excited about that because I just know so many people that, that have so many experiences. And of course, with Slim, he's kind of like the Jeff Foxworthy, Jerry Clower, T-Bone mix,
Yep.
from the South, and he makes fun of me and picks on me. And so I know everybody will get a kick out of that, but I'm really excited about having him on here because actually he's with all, even putting all the comical side of him to the side.
He's a heck of a hunter.
He's a good hunter,
Yes, he is.
And so he's a good hunter and he's funny, and he is going to be a blast being on here. And so my plan is in the future is I want to have him on here, even with all the serious talk and my
absolutely.
stories. I want to have him on here as much as possible, just for the, it's just another added, thing. I think that your personality and knowledge, along with my life and experiences, and then with his kind of craziness, I just think the three of us, we're going to have a really good time. It's going to be enjoyable, but also something people can, learn from. And I think it's going to be to me, I think it's going to be different than anything else anybody's doing. And
Yep.
I commend, everybody. I listen to a lot of different guys doing podcasts, and I like all of them. The guys that do the Hunter podcast I did here a while back. It's been, they've been hugely successful, and I got a lot of reviews and a lot of good feedback from that. And then, I know Brackett's got a good show, and I like listening to, his stuff and a lot of different ones. But I do think we're going to be able to provide some really quality content. And I've got about $100 in here that we can have stories on. So
Absolutely. Love it. And I promise you that you're going to learn something along the way that's going to help somebody be successful and kill a big deer, because it's happened to me. I know it's happened to Slim, and that's, having fun, but again, giving some people some pearls and secrets and tips that if they can be more successful, that's part of this whole thing
that's
too,
what
brother.
I've always, and you've always been extremely adamant about this. Marty has always been extremely adamant about this. Slim has always been extremely adamant. And I mean, even Josh Bomar told me years ago, I've known Josh for a long time. He's like, man, your biggest asset is your knowledge.
Yep.
He's like, nobody has had the amount of experiences that you've had, and I mean, I don't know that we will want to. I mean, I've loved to hunt other things. I've been around the world, and I've done this, Grand Slam of sheep and elk, and I've got, I don't know, 10 or 12 mule deer over 200. I mean, there's a lot of things we can talk about. Obviously, we're going to be mainly focused on whitetails because that's kind of the kingpin of the hunting world, and that's my number one love and passion. But I love to hunt everything, I mean, I used to hunt squirrels like they were booners, so just love it, but no,
have a
I'm
lot
excited.
of fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
we are. I mean, we gotta, that's the reason you do, is to have fun and enjoy and meet people and talk about, the good experiences and learn and help teach people and bring knowledge to people that that want to know how you got started. How'd you do this? I have people all the time ask me, well, how did you even get started in this? How did you get started in TV? How do I get in the hunting industry? Different things. So it's so many different avenues, and
we're going to cover a lot
to it. Oh yeah. Hopefully we'll be doing this for a long time.
Absolutely. Well, look, brother, thank you. This has been truly enjoyable.
Oh, thank you.
And I am so excited to kick this off and do this with you. And everybody, please, stay tuned. We've got a lot coming. And the 11th Commandment by Spook Nation is going to be something that we're excited to bring to you, and you're going to get a lot out of. So more to come, and God bless.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.